Barron Trump stepped out of the black SUV, his tall frame exuding quiet confidence despite the gloomy weather. The corporate building ahead gleamed with power and prestige. But Barron wasn't there to flaunt his name. He was on a mission for a charity meeting that had been weeks in the making. As he approached the glass doors, a firm hand blocked his path. "Do you have an appointment?" the security guard asked, his tone indifferent. Barron nodded and introduced himself politely, but his name seemed to hold no weight. "You're not on the list," the guard replied curtly, motioning him to step aside. Passers-by began to notice the exchange, their whispers carrying a mix of curiosity and ridicule. Barron stood quietly in the rain, his composure unwavering, while onlookers waited to see if the young man would use his powerful name to demand entry. What happened next was nothing anyone could have predicted. Standing outside in the pouring rain, Barron felt the weight of the judgment that surrounded him. People passed by, some curious, others indifferent, all unaware of the cause he had come to support. The rain soaked his overcoat, but he stood there, unmoving, despite every effort to reach the event organizers falling flat. His phone buzzed several times, but each call went to voicemail. As the minutes turned into hours, the whispers around him grew louder. "Isn't that Trump's kid?" one woman muttered to her friend. "Looks like he's finally getting a taste of the real world," the friend scoffed. Barron heard every word. It stung, but instead of letting anger take hold, he simply smiled, quietly acknowledging the reality of the situation. His name, once a symbol of privilege, no longer seemed to open doors. But today wasn't about his last name, it was about the cause he was fighting for, raising funds for underprivileged students. The meeting was important, but it was more than just about him. It was about doing what was right, regardless of the circumstances. Hours passed, and the rain showed no signs of letting up. Barron stood outside, drenched, as his stomach growled with hunger. Yet he didn't budge. He could feel the growing skepticism from the crowd around him, their eyes on him, judging silently. The whispers had turned into open mockery. A well-dressed executive walked by and glanced at him with suspicion. "This doesn't look good for you, kid. Just leave," he muttered dismissively. Barron didn't flinch. Instead, he took a deep breath and resisted the urge to respond. He wasn't there to prove anything to anyone. As the minutes dragged on, a familiar feeling crept over him, a sense of isolation, something he had felt often in his life. He thought of his father's presidency, the constant media scrutiny, and how the world always seemed to judge him for things beyond his control. Despite everything, Barron remained firm, standing in the rain, unwavering in his resolve to do what was right. No matter how insignificant he felt in that moment, he wasn't giving up. Just as Barron began to question whether his perseverance was in vain, a kind, older man approached him with a worn umbrella. "Hey son, you okay?" the man asked, his voice warm despite the cold, damp weather. Barron gave a small nod, grateful for the gesture, but gently declined. "I'm fine, thank you," he said with a faint smile, still unwilling to leave. The man hesitated, then pointed toward a nearby cafe. "You don't look fine. You should come inside and warm up." But Barron shook his head, his determination still unbroken. The man shrugged and walked away, muttering something about kids these days. Barron watched him go, the offer of warmth lingering in his mind, yet he remained steadfast. In that moment he felt the weight of his decision, but also a renewed sense of purpose. His mission wasn't just about comfort or recognition, it was about staying true to his cause. As the rain continued to fall, a small act of kindness from a stranger reminded Barron that even in the harshest of times, humanity could still shine through. As Barron continued to wait, the cold rain now soaking through his clothes, an assistant from the building finally emerged. She glanced at him briefly, her eyes filled with a subtle disdain, before speaking in a sharp tone, "You're still here." Barron nodded, replying simply, "I'm waiting for the charity meeting." The assistant rolled her eyes, brushing him off. "They're busy. You should leave," she said, her voice dismissive. But then, as she turned to walk away, she hesitated for a moment, and Barron noticed a flicker of guilt in her gaze. "Is there a reason I'm being kept out?" he asked quietly, his voice steady despite the sting of her words. She paused before answering, her voice lowered. "Some people don't want you here. They think your name will overshadow the cause." Barron's heart sank as the truth of the situation became painfully clear. This wasn't about protocol or procedures, it was about prejudice. His name, his family, everything he represented had become the very thing standing in the way of the cause he was here to support. Yet, Despite the weight of this revelation, Barron chose not to react with anger. Instead, he simply thanked her, acknowledging that even in moments of discomfort, grace could be the most powerful response. The harsh reality of the situation left a bitter taste in his mouth, but he remained resolute. He wasn't here for his name, he was here for the students, for those who needed his help. Barron sat on a nearby bench, his clothes soaked and his mind heavy with the weight of the day's events. He pulled out his phone, hoping to find some way to contribute to the cause. Even if he couldn't get inside the building, he started drafting an email, detailing his willingness to support the charity in any way he could, despite being kept out. His determination burned brighter now, fueled by the obstacles he faced. Just as he hit send on the email, a group of reporters appeared, cameras flashing and microphones shoved in his face. "How does it feel to be rejected, Mr. Trump?" one asked mockingly, eager for drama. Barron took a deep breath, his calmness a stark contrast to the frenzy around him. "This isn't about me," he said firmly. "It's about the cause." The reporters pressed on, their questions sharp, but Barron didn't engage. He refused to give them the spectacle they were looking for. Deep down, he knew that the more he fed into their negativity, the more power it would have over him. So he remained silent, letting the questions roll off his shoulders. In that moment, Barron felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he didn't let it break him. Instead, he doubled down on his purpose. He would help these students, no matter the judgment or the challenges. As the reporters scattered, hoping for more drama, Barron remained resolute, his focus unwavering. The day wasn't over, and neither was his mission. Just as Barron began to feel the toll of the long hours and relentless judgment, the woman who had organized the meeting finally appeared. She rushed toward him, her face full of apology and concern. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice filled with regret. "There was a mistake. Please come inside." Barron hesitated for a moment, his gaze drifting toward the security guard who had denied him entry earlier. Instead of anger, he offered a quiet smile and said, "Thank you for doing your job." The guard, clearly stunned, didn't know how to respond. The crowd, which had been silently watching the exchange, seemed taken aback by Barron's grace. As Barron entered the building, the warmth of the lobby was a sharp contrast to the cold he had endured outside. But it wasn't the physical warmth he appreciated the most, it was the change in atmosphere, the shift from judgment to a chance to finally make a difference. But Barron knew this was just the beginning. Inside, the skepticism remained palpable. People whispered behind his back, some staring openly while others avoided eye contact. Still, Barron focused on why he was there: to support the charity and raise awareness for the cause. He had no illusions about the challenges ahead, but this was his mission, and no matter how much doubt others cast, he was determined to stay true to it. The doubts and whispers couldn't erase the purpose he had carried with him that entire day. As the event continued, Barron remained focused on the cause despite the cold glances and hushed murmurs from the crowd. During a break in the proceedings, Barron noticed a young volunteer struggling to carry a stack of heavy boxes. Without hesitation, he walked over and offered his help. The volunteer, surprised, thanked him but remarked, "I didn't think someone like you would help." Barron smiled gently and replied, "People expect a lot of things." The moment was small, but it marked a shift in the volunteer's perception of him. She seemed to realize that Barron was more than just a name or a symbol of wealth. He was someone who genuinely cared. This brief interaction had a ripple effect. The volunteer's opinion of him had shifted, and slowly, others in the room began to take notice. Actions, Barron realized, spoke louder than words. While some in the room remained skeptical, others were starting to see that his presence there wasn't about seeking attention or recognition, but about supporting a cause that mattered. It wasn't the applause that mattered, it was the small, often unseen efforts that made the biggest difference. Barron's decision to help the volunteer reminded him of why he was there: to make a tangible impact, not just to stand in front of a crowd. His determination to help, no matter how minor the task, was shaping the way people saw him, and more importantly, it was aligning his actions with the values he believed in. Weeks later, Barron received a letter that would bring him the emotional closure he had been seeking. It was from Liam, the young boy who had offered him a pretzel on the rainy day outside the building. The letter simply read, "Thank you for helping kids like me. I got one of the scholarships, and now I can go to school." Barron's heart swelled with gratitude as he read the words, feeling the weight of all the struggles and doubts he had faced melt away in that single moment. Every mocking comment, Every ounce of judgment, every difficulty he endured was worth it. This letter, this simple act of kindness from a young boy, was the real reward for his perseverance. With renewed purpose, Barron stood at a podium once more, but this time the audience was different. The room was filled with students, their faces bright with hope and possibility. Barron took a deep breath, his voice steady as he addressed them. "You are the future," he said. "I'm honored to support you." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Barron didn't seek it. He knew that his true purpose had always been to lead with kindness, not power. The impact he had made wasn't in the recognition or accolades, it was in the lives he had touched and the future he had helped shape. And in that moment, Barron knew he had done what was right, and that was enough.